Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz, who's also the host of his own show, The Rational Egoist. And contrary to what some folks are speculating in the chat here, Michael, we're not late because of my technical difficulties. We're not late even because of any issues that you had. We're just we were walking a little bit more slowly today because we had things to deal with. So, folks, it has nothing.
Okay, to do and what he means, and what he means by things to deal with is we were talking.
Yes, we were talking. Now, this is sort of boomer adjacent in that I haven't been receiving emails from Persephone. I haven't been receiving emails from anybody for the past 2.5 days. So I'm certainly having some technical issues, and we were talking about resolving those, and that's what took the 2 minutes, folks. So anyway, how's the Rational Egoist going, Mike? Give us your daily update on the Rational
It's going great. We should have an episode coming out tomorrow, all about how to deal with no. I look forward to that. We've got an episode out right now that's a redemption story about a guy who spent time in prison, turned his life around. Now he's a motivational speaker. That was a fun interview. This one tomorrow is going to be great. Next week, I got one coming out with the objectivist best-selling author Christina Laporte. That's a really good interview. That should be out Monday. I've got some stuff coming up with Jim Valiant and Andy Bernstein. So a lot going on.
Andy Bernstein?
Yeah.
Can you imagine taking a class with a guy who talks sort of like this?
If he doesn't talk like that.
He sort of does. I mean,
he doesn't. That's crazy. He doesn't talk like that at all.
He has a very, very deep Brooklyn accent.
Yeah, he sounds like an Italian from Brooklyn, not like an old mensch.
Like a Goomba.
That voice you're doing is not a Goomba voice.
I do Goomba voices too.
But you may do them. That wasn't the question. The point was that wasn't a Goomba
All right,
voice.
Before we start bickering again, folks, let's get into the news highlights here because, as usual, Michael sent me a lot of stuff. But I want to deal with the foreign policy stuff here that you sent me. You sent me a couple of articles, of course, because I don't like, but I am engaged in the Israel conflict in the Gaza.
That's why I sent them.
Thank you. I appreciate it. In the Morning Dispatch, in the quick hits top stories, Canada plans to recognize the Palestinian State at the United Nations General Assembly in September. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who I used to think was a pretty articulate, funny guy, and now he's on my shit list. He said Wednesday. His decisions followed similar announcements by France and the United Kingdom, which said Tuesday that it intends to recognize Palestinian statehood if Israel doesn't take steps to end the war in Gaza. Now, what I find scary about that statement is Israel has been taking steps to end the war in Gaza. It's called fighting it to its conclusion, but it is increasingly hampered by its bowing to international community pressures and to the overall dominance of altruism, which is dictating that Israel serve its enemies in the way that it would serve itself, which is contrary to what it needs to do. It simply needs to defeat the enemy. Now, had Israel done that from the beginning, the war probably would have lasted 2 weeks. And Israel wouldn't have put its own man and woman power and its economic life in jeopardy the way it has now. And it's standing in the international community. Although I'm skeptical, because I think anything Israel does, the world sees with a double measures by a double standard. So if they went in there, blitzkrieged Gaza, completely leveled it immediately within 2 weeks, overwhelmed Palestinians with force, they probably would have been facing the same accusations of genocide and ethnic cleansing that they've been facing for the past 75 years. So it's disappointing to me to see the Palestinian war policy of using its citizens as war fodder and as a means to demoralize the Israeli people working in the international community, with France, Britain, and now Canada stepping up to claim that there is such a thing as a Palestinian state. This only makes the war last longer. It gives Hamas the moral standing it needs to continue fighting this war. It sees that its policies are actually successful and it will not stop them. So actually prolonging the war is the fault of the international community that keeps siding with Gaza and keeps giving it what it wants, what the Gazans want. So if you want to stop the war, make the Palestinian people extremely uncomfortable and don't let up the pressure. don't show the rest of the world that this policy that they have of using their own citizens as sacrificial war fodder is working in the international community, because that's only going to get us more of the same. Anyway, I had to say that because I'm completely bummed that now Canada is jumping on the bandwagon and Israel is becoming a pariah state. All because altruism is king, my friend. Do you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, you and I one of these days are going to have an all-out debate on morality during war. That's what we need to do, because it's too extensive of a topic. I by and large agree with you on what you said, but the points of disagreement, I think, are more interesting, and it's largely to do with language and concepts. But when I say that, I'm not saying it's a language game, because language and concepts actually have reference in reality. So, for instance, when you say it's what the Gazans want, right? That is not a legitimate statement. It's not a legitimate concept. There is no unified Gazan thought any more than there's unified American thought. So if someone was to say this is what America wants, that wouldn't be an accurate statement, because there's in America there's a much larger.
So when Walter Williams said Americans have contempt for the Constitution, he's false.
Yes. Yeah.
Even though that contempt is demonstrated by the fact that some of the protests for the big beautiful bill are respecting the anti-constitutional elements of it.
So are Ilya Soman and Randy Barnett Americans?
I guess.
Okay. Do they have contempt for the Constitution? No. It's clearly no. It's clearly no. And that's
but are you saying you can't generalize, because there will be particulars that will contradict the generalization?
What I'm saying is that if you're going to be accurate in your communication, when you start to, or even in the clarity of your own mind, is when you start to generalize and forget that there's particulars that contradict your generalization, it becomes dangerous.
Why does it matter? In war, why does it matter? In war, where one side is the aggressor, why does it matter?
Because
reasoning to defend
because I'll tell you why it matters, because war takes place in reality, correct?
It does.
Well, accuracy in regard to reality always matters.
James says no such thing as a dominant culture, Mike.
That's not what you said, but sure there is.
Okay, so would you most people believe what the dominant culture believes?
If you were to make that statement, I wouldn't have an argument.
But that's implied in my statement. But so when I say the Gazans,
because here's why it's not. And let me just tell you. So when you say this is what the Palestinians think, right? If you say this is what the Palestinians want, is for this war to go on interminably, right? Now, because
they don't want the war to go on interminably.
No. It's a hypothetical. I'm saying if you say that, if that's your statement,
hypothetical accurate. No,
what was your statement? I don't even remember.
Hypothetical is that the Gazans.
What did you say the Gazans want?
The Gazans want the war to continue because they want an end to the Israeli state. They want the existence.
So now, if we could demonstrate that all Palestinians think that way, well, then you could obliterate all Palestinians. There's no problem with it, because they're all your enemy. They're all your military enemy.
You're trying to get them to see that the Palestinian
I understand what I'm saying, Mark, that you're missing my point. What I'm saying is that once you state it's Palestinians, now any action taken against those Palestinians can be justified based on the fact that every Palestinian's an enemy, but that's not the case. There's a guy here.
Palestinian?
What is a Palestinian?
Yeah,
it's an Arab who traces his ancestry to the area known as Palestine.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it isn't. It's an Arab who identifies with a particular political agenda, an ethnocentric political agenda. That's what a Palestinian is. The term wasn't even used widely until 1964. So technically, the Palestinian identity itself is something that has been invented. It's been invented, Mark.
Every identity's been invented, Mark.
Yeah, but this one especially was invented.
Because it happens to be newer?
No, because it happens to be an invention of Soviet propaganda. and KGB propaganda brought over into that region by Yasser Arafat. It's an invention. So it claims to be
Okay. Then when you
claims to
say
root itself in
okay,
solid
so then when you say
identity, and it's
Mark,
not.
okay, well then your statement is even more incorrect. If you say what you said was Gazans want, if you say Palestinians want, if there's no such thing as Palestinians, then it doesn't make any sense at all.
The Gazan people seem to be a more extreme version of the Palestinian ideology.
Okay, so the Gazans, go with the Gazans,
Sure.
right? The Gazans are not what's the word I'm looking for here? Are not a mono culture. They don't all think the same way.
I think they're more of a monoculture than American culture is.
But that's not what your statement was. But that's not what the original statement was.
The fact that there are Palestinians or Gazans in that area that agree with me that the Israel should prosecute the war harshly and try to get Hamas out of there. They are on my side. Freedom fighters.
So I wanted to say, so look, so Ayn Rand fan club, and this is another problem, and this is where some objectivists drive me a little batty. He says maybe it's easier to use society. Well, no. And as objectivists, which is the perspective from which I'm coming, remember that Ayn Rand said there's no such thing as society. Remember that. That's
right. I would agree with you in this sense, because Palestinian and Gazan is a particular kind of identity that has less to do with location, more to do with ideology.
What I'm saying is that generalizations, when they're not qualified with the statement, are dangerous statements. They tend to lead to stereo. That's my whole point. Now, I didn't want to get into that. That's why it's interesting, because I actually said we need to have a debate on this topic at another time, because I didn't want to occupy this show with that debate. But the main thing that I want to say, it's actually a question asked by Ian Gilmore, if I can just go back and find it, because it's actually the way that I'm thinking about this thing. Let me find Ian. I wish there was a way that I could who will they say is in charge of Palestine? Now, that to me is the key, because if you're going to recognize Palestine as a state, that means you have a government. Who is their government? Well, in Gaza, it's Hamas. So are these countries, I think it's who said it? Canada said they might, France, and
Canada, France, and Great Britain.
In Great Britain. So are they going to recognize Hamas as a legitimate government? Who are they recognizing as a separate Palestinian state? Who's the government that they're recognizing? And, of course, they're going to avoid that, because what they're actually trying to do is cater to somebody, which is what politicians do. I don't know these particular who they're attempting to pander to, but they can say, we'll recognize it. And this kind of gets back to the original point I was making about generalizations, is that they can be broad and say, we're going to recognize the Palestinian state. But what about the particulars? Okay, who's the president? Who's the prime minister? Who's either the parliament, the Congress? Who's the governing body that you're choosing to recognize? Who's the ambassador that we're to negotiate with to bring an end to the war that they all want to end? It's a nice thing to say. It's like, I don't want there to be homeless, right? Okay, well, what the hell are you going to do about it? And it's the same thing. We're going to recognize Palestine. Okay, what does that mean when you put it into practice? And it means they cannot really do it. I'll give the answer.
Exactly, but they will, and they'll make that gesture, which will feed Hamas. It'll feed the Palestinian Authority. It'll feed Islamic Jihad. It'll feed all of those extremist religious fanatics in the region, because they'll see that their strategy is working. And they can't see that, but it's too late now that that milk has been spilt, as they say. So we'll have to deal with the after effects of it.
Did you just say that milk has been spilt?
I did. I made up my own thing.
That's not your own. First of all, it's not your own thing.
Well,
spilled milk is not your
spilled milk, but I said.
But that's not your own thing. But secondly, it's kind of really a boomerish thing to say. That's all I want. That's all I want to say.
Okay, yeah. Well, I guess because the new generation is lactose intolerant all the way through. So you sent me an article from Reason magazine where Jerome Powell seems to be a little bit more heroic in my mind, since he's standing up to the Trump administration's relentless pressure to lower interest rates. Jerome Powell decided not to do that this time around. He kept them the same. And of course, he's being excoriated for that on social media, on Truth Social, by Trump. And of course, conservatives across the board, pundits all across the board, are screaming basically the same things that Trump is screaming, that Powell is too late. He's a terrible Federal Reserve chairman. I think it's great what he's doing. I think Trump could actually wind up with one of those weird paradoxes where all of his policies are seen as good because Jerome Powell, more responsible currency policies, actually bail him out a little bit and put a little bit of a hedge on the kinds of crazy impulsive things the Trump administration is doing. What do you think about Powell's move right now? He also said that the article also implied that it's giving him some wiggle room so that when the disaster, this is where I'm coming from, where the disaster of some of Trump's policies starts actually bearing fruit, he can raise interest rates and give us a faux boom to overcome some of those hurdles that Trump is putting in our way. What do you think of Jerome Powell?
All right. So generally speaking, and it doesn't, now there are times when the economy would justify a slash in interest rates. Generally speaking, I think it's a bad idea because it ends up leading to inflation, or, to the boom bust cycle would be a better way to put it. But what concerns me more about this story isn't the particular about whether he's going to cut interest rates or not. It's the fact that when you put human beings in charge of this, rather than having a commodity standard such as gold or silver, you end up with what we have, where there's a president putting pressure on him because the president understands that lowering interest rate in the short term will lead to a booming economy. And that's what he wants. He wants to be able to show something. It's the seen and the unseen, right? He's not taking into consideration what's going to happen after he's out of office. Much like when he pressured the Fed to keep interest rates low in 2019, 2020. And, they ultimately did keep them low, and we ended up with the inflation, which Trump takes no accountability for. Not that Biden's blameless in the situation. But the ultimate problem here is that they want human beings making choices about things that human beings should not be making choices about. The interest rates ought to be governed by market forces, not by what's going on in the minds of Jerome Powell and Donald Trump, who all have their own interests in play as well, that some of which we know and some of which we don't know.
I couldn't agree more. Now, I wish the Republicans would take more responsibility for the inflation crisis that we had. They dumped it all on Biden, and they seem to do that rather successfully. How do you account for that they were able to slip away from that massive monetary injection that Trump made himself, that his own administration made? How are they able to slip away?
Because the Democrats were in no position to argue that, right? The Democrats like the handouts. They like the injection of all that money into the economy. They like the COVID payouts to people. They were in favor of them. So what were they going to say? No, we actually didn't cause the inflation by ourselves. Trump contributed because he was doing the same policies that we do. No, they want to argue that those policies are good. And so, Trump gets away with it. But he gets away with it really with his own base, which I don't know how important that is anyway.
Well, they're a pretty crazy base, though. And it's upwards of 30% of the population. That's no small base. And now they seem to be, agitating for policies that are pushing Trump in different directions with respect to Israel. So they do have an effect on him. I think a lot of politicians are motivated by their base.
Sure, absolutely. I wish I could screenshot, I don't know how to do this. There's 3 quotes in a row, or 3 comments in a row, that I would like to put on the board and discuss. Do you mind if I detour us just a little bit?
Go ahead.
Okay, I want to start this off. So I had a debate yesterday with this guy, Frank Zanu. He's a popular podcaster. He is a friend he's a friend of a friend. That's how I got to know him. I've been on his show before. We would go there to debate objective morality. Now, if you're going to debate objective morality, you necessarily have to start with broad abstractions, right? Standard, purpose, free will, things of this nature. But what ended up happening is, while we started this, he dives into complex concretes. For instance, I said, well, it's an objective fact that if somebody shoots themselves in the head, it's bad for them. He says, well, what about if it's this, and he brings up all these qualifiers. And I told him, well, I had mentioned context earlier, and it, of course, is important, but we're trying to identify principle here. And we went on in this fashion, and then he got into how can, you only know something if somebody else tells you something. He then couldn't differentiate between a word specifying something and the thing actually existing. For instance, he said, how do you know something that you just experienced on your own? And I said, well, driving over here, it's 100 degrees outside. My car doesn't have air conditioner. I was sweating my ass off. I know that without anybody telling me. He then says, but you had to learn the language. He doesn't understand the difference between the language and the physiological processes that the language is identifying. I say this because much of this ultimately comes down to epistemology, the study of knowledge and how we know things, how we justify things, what we say. So we have 3 quotes in a row here. I'm going to start with the first one from Eutychus. Eutychus says, what's with this semantics? And what I say to that is semantics is vital. Right? It's not vital if you think that logic is wordplay or that words are just games that philosophers play so that they can sound smart and smoke their pipes. Then semantics is nonsensical. But if you take semantics as meaning and you understand the tie that words have to reality, the role that concepts play in a rational process and how accuracy and concept formation and how concepts relate to each other and ultimately existence relate to each other, then you understand that semantics is incredibly vital, mostly for the clarification of knowledge in one's own mind, but also when you're communicating with other people. So semantics, vital. So
wait, before you go on, if you're gonna change points in a minute or go to the next question, I want to talk to you about this before we go on, because I agree with everything that you're saying, but I want
to go ahead.
I want to put a qualifier in it with respect to what we were talking about and where I think
that's the next question, and we're going to get to it if you want. It'd probably be helpful if you saw that question first.
Okay, maybe, but I'll probably forget what I was going to say, but go ahead.
You're not. Look, this is the next question. I'll let you lead.
Mike, he's making a general statement, not an absolute one. You're talking past each other. Okay, I agree with that, but I also agree with the stuff that you said. So I think semantics are important because I think concepts mean something with respect to it. They're vital to our minds for categorizing and organizing thoughts. It's vital for the way that we see the world. It's vital that we communicate clearly because those concepts connect to reality. At the same time, I understand that there are popular usages of certain words that take into consideration some of the particulars that you're talking about. I see you smiling. You think, I've got him in my sights now. So I was perhaps being loose with my language because I took for granted that the particulars, the fact that there are particular Gazans who do not agree with the administration that's putting them under the hammer, that there are particular Gazans that would rather see the Israelis win the war, that think and feel exactly as I do about the situation, are present. So for me, the concept embodied both understanding that during wartime, those people are going to be caught in the crossfire as well. And there's really not a lot that can be done with it, given Hamas's propensity for using civilians as shields.
Okay. Now, I liked your clarification. Thank you. Now, Race. I know Mark. You know Mark. So when Mark makes a general statement like that, I know because I've had the conversation with him before that he doesn't necessarily mean every single Palestinian thinks that. I also understand that as an individualist, like if somebody were to say a society, I understand that when you say society, generally speaking, it's not an important term. I also understand that it was important enough for somebody like Ayn Rand and Margaret Thatcher to clarify that there's no such thing as society, because what happens is these things become reified as if they actually exist, as if the generalization is true, that the generalization is the absolute that you're talking about. So now if somebody's watching the show for the first time, or if somebody watches in a rerun and they hear Mark say Palestinians, the Palestinians think this. They don't know Mark. They don't know the context. They don't understand the objectivist position or objectivist epistemology, which is why it's necessary to clarify. But it's also when you're making the argument, if you speak in generalizations like that and then jump from the generalization to the particular policy you're going to have, it's a step that's not justified, because once you say the Palestinians want this, or the Gazans, this is what they want, the Gazans are the enemy, now it becomes, I personally think whatever you do to Hamas is justified, right? But if all Gaza is Hamas, then the syllogism would be everything that you do to the Gazans. If you say anything you do to Hamas is justified, all Gazans are on line with Hamas, therefore anything you do to all Gazans is justified. That would be an inaccurate thing because your premise is false. So I understand what you're saying about it not being an absolute.
But I don't say anything you do to the Gazans is justified.
No, it's not. It's not about whether you say it or not. It's about communicating effectively and accurately when we're speaking. So that's that. Now there's this from my friend Gary Menard, who I absolutely love, by the way. I've been friends with him on Facebook for years, and I had a great chance to meet him in person. Super nice guy. He says,
I wanted to read this out loud because.
Oh no, you can go ahead. You read it out loud.
This is an argument I've often made online, and I want to see what you say about it. Gary says morality applies to civilized society. War is a breakdown of civilization. Morality doesn't begin until war ends. Now, I see where he's going with that. I see what he's saying with that. Now I want to get your spin on it.
Okay.
I think I know what you're going to say as well.
Well, I think it's absolutely incorrect. I think that Ayn Rand's formula that morality ends where a gun begins is true if taken literally. What I mean is that it doesn't mean that if somebody points a gun at you, you're now robbed of all moral agency. It means that to the degree that force is used against you, to that degree, you're not morally culpable. So a threat would be one thing. A punch in the face.
So your moral object is to end the threat, is to end the danger, to end the emergency.
Yeah. There's different degrees of moral accountability. For instance, you understand, Mark, the difference between somebody threatening you and somebody punching you in your face, right?
I do.
So if I were to say to you, if you don't move, right, if you don't walk over there, I'm going to hit you. Now there's a threat, but you still have the choice whether to walk over there or not, which means you still have moral agency in the situation. If I knock you out,
I mean that's now we're getting into a bad argument.
But we're not, and I'm going to tell you why. Because if I punch you in the face, knock you out, and carry you over there, that's 100% force. You're 100% not morally accountable.
You're threatening me. I have a right to, I think, preemptive force. If you say, if I don't go over there, you're going to punch me in the face.
You do. Who said you don't?
The choice you're giving me is not effectively a choice. Your money or your life is not effectively a choice.
No, Mark. What I'm saying is, if suppose you were to run from that, or suppose you were to just turn your money over because of the threat, or suppose you were to retaliate, it's not the same degree of moral agency as if you just went and handed out your money to beggars. Because there is the threat of force there. So your degree of moral culpability is lessened. It doesn't mean it's not there at all.
Well, what's my moral responsibility to myself?
You in that situation, your ultimate moral responsibility is to further your long-term interest.
Which may be,
but it may be to run, it may be to fight, it may be to give over your money. In that,
and what if it's to fight? I decided in that moment.
That's fine.
I have to.
Then there's nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying is that to the degree that force is used against you is the degree to which your moral culpability is lessened. That's it. That's all I'm saying, right? So now, once you say, okay, I get the point that if you're not living amongst civilized people, you're constantly at war, you have people threatening you, therefore you're not morally culpable. The problem with this argument is that there's people who rise in uncivilized situations to heroic status, and we recognize them as heroes for being, what's the word I'm looking for? Paragons of virtue. Now, if morality truly only could take place inside a civilized society, then how could you morally form a society, right? Do the hypothetical. If we were living in an uncivilized society and we said we want to form a society, right? What would be the moral way to do it? Could we act morally to form the civilized society in such circumstances?
Sure.
We absolutely could. which means that the morality would have to precede the civilized society. My only point is that there is morality even in war. There's things that you should not do. There's things that you can do. Morality applies to the degree that you have free agency. That's my only point. So now that we've gotten into the weeds, and you're free to respond, I'm okay with that. Let me see if I think I gotta hit this.
I don't mind that formulation, but I think that morally you're accountable as an individual to yourself. As a society, I think the government is accountable to the people. In other words, their sole responsibility is to protect the long-term interests and lives of their people. Of course, Hamas has divorced itself from this fundamental responsibility, but the Israeli government has not. And so their responsibility is to end the threat as soon as possible. We know that emergencies are conditions under which human life is impossible. That's what war is. It's the conditions under which human life is impossible. And so the defender, especially one defending principles, moral principles of good and rights, has a responsibility to their own people to end it as quickly and decisively as possible. This is precisely what Israel has not been doing, because they've been worried about the proportionality of what they're doing. And they've been worried about how that appears to people on the outside, none of whom can really judge these circumstances the way the people on the ground actually can. I think that Israel should have acted decisively within days of the attack, and they should have done it overwhelmingly. They should have put the Gazan people in the position they're in now, but within days, it even made it worse if possible, because it's the discomfort. It's Hamas and their acolytes seeing that their position, their policy is unsuccessful and leads to death, destruction, and hell on earth that will lead them to divorce themselves from it, which I think would lead them to divorce themselves from this fake Palestinian identity that has a political ideology attached to it, that renders these folks susceptible to Hamas's drive to push all the Jews into the Mediterranean Sea. That's their worldview. Their worldview is to end Israel, not stop the war.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with what you're saying. So I don't know if that was a rejoinder to me, because that doesn't contradict what I'm saying, and it doesn't contradict it,
because
my point is that morality applies to the degree that one has free agency. I didn't give any moral conclusions or introduce any particulars about what one should do. I injected an abstract principle that there is morality does exist, even if you're in uncivilized society, to the degree that you are free to act. That's my point.
But for the person who has decided to be the aggressor, they are throwing aside morality because that
group of people.
That's what Gary is getting at.
I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
Aside morality and civilization.
I don't believe that's what he was getting at.
They've decided not to engage in diplomacy. They've decided not to engage in
Hamas.
Persuasion. Hamas. Representing the Palestinian people.
No,
the majority of
no, and this
Gaza,
goes back to the original thing. No, they don't.
Yes, they do. The majority of people in Gaza and the majority of people in the Palestinian Authority agree.
Okay.
Agree.
First of all, my question to you is: how do you know that the Palestinian people agree with Hamas?
Pardon me?
How do you know that the vast majority of Palestinian people agree with Hamas?
There have been statistics, opinion polls, man in the street interviews with people.
Okay.
Now,
and do you trust the opinion polls of asking people who are living amongst absolute savages?
I know what you're saying.
You trust those opinion polls. I don't trust those opinion polls. I generally don't trust opinion polls anyway. Never mind conducted in those circumstances. But this gets back, and now you've just made my earlier point.
I do, since both those administrations were voted for, even though they haven't allowed votes since, they haven't allowed elections since.
Okay, so 20 years ago,
a plurality and a majority of the population.
So 20 years ago, Hamas got a plurality of the vote, and then has been a dictatorship ever since. And then you say those are representatives of the people?
I say they still, at this time, as authoritarian as they are, because I don't think many Arab cultures understand anything other than authoritarian regimes. I don't think their ideology of Islamicism takes them beyond authoritarianism as a means of dealing with other people and other cultures.
For Hamas,
Support exactly what Hamas is doing. Support
you think that what? Give me a percentage that you say supports Hamas and
Well,
justify.
I mean, the last statistic, the last stat that I saw was somewhere in the neighborhood, and they did this in the Palestinian Authority, by the way, where there is, quote unquote, technically more freedom on the part of the Palestinian people.
But you don't believe that.
I do. I actually
you
do
think that under the PLO,
only because only it's not just under the PA.
You're just saying they're more free than under Hamas.
They're more free because there's also split ruling with the IDF.
But they're not free. But they're not actually free.
I would say they are. I wouldn't classify them as free, but I certainly classify them as sympathizing with the cause of their government, whether or not they like the authoritarian means that their government engages in with respect to them.
Okay.
I think they want Israelis to die. I think they want Jews to die. I think they want the Israelis pushed into the sea. I think they want to eliminate Israel as a legitimate.
You think so you're saying that's how the overwhelming amount of Palestinians think, not majority.
The majority of Palestinians within the Palestinian Authority and Gaza.
I'm saying overwhelming majority. I'm talking about more than 80%.
Oh, I would say in the 70%.
Okay. But I would say that we have absolutely no way to know such a thing. None. Okay. But I want to address something here.
Conducted approval ratings of Hamas dropping from 52% who expressed satisfaction to Hamas in December 2023 to 43%. So look, this just proves my point that the discomfort that the Palestinian people are in is what's making them lose.
Hold on a second. Wait a second.
No.
It doesn't prove your point, Mark.
More uncomfortable. You need to make them even more uncomfortable.
Mark,
so they give up this
Mark, hold on. You cited opinion polls, which I automatically said I don't trust them anyways. But you said that it was going to be over 70%.
Man in the street interviews.
Hold on. You said it was, but even at the beginning, it was only 52%. How does that prove your point? That the overwhelming amount of Palestinians support Hamas.
You're just taking Persephone's word that the opinion polling conducted showed approval ratings dropping from 50%.
I didn't even know it was Persephone. I don't know what you're reading.
I was.
You took her word. You cited it. I didn't.
I was citing a poll that I read a long time ago with respect to people in the Palestinian Authority, Persephone, where I think they evaluate Hamas and esteem Hamas much higher, which is why Abbas has not allowed elections in the Palestinian Authority because he's afraid.
So why hasn't Hamas allowed elections?
He's afraid. Listen, this is to me is crazy, but he's afraid.
Why hasn't Hamas
He's afraid that
elections?
He's afraid that Hamas will win.
Okay, but why won't Hamas allow elections?
Because maybe they're afraid that Fatah will win. Equally bad actors.
Yeah, they are. Nobody's arguing they're not, Mark. What I'm saying is that we have no means to accurately assess how the overwhelming majority of Palestinians think about this stuff. None. And by the way, I'm all for going out and obliterating Hamas. And if they're using civilians as shields and you can't get to them without killing those civilians, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's sad. I think it's horrible. I'm just saying that ascribing a view to over 70% of the people when you have no means to actually know that is not valid epistemology. But I do, before we move on to the argument, I wanted to say something here because Ayn Rand Fan Club says, this seems different from Rand's take that there are no innocents in war. It seems different, Scott, because it is different, because Ayn Rand is not my messiah. She is wrong about this, in my view. And if she were alive, I'd be happy to argue with her. I disagree with her about this. I disagree with her that consent is necessary to form a valid government. There's, plenty of things that I differ with.
Well, she doesn't. I don't think she thinks that either. Nobody could get every individual in the world in the country to consent to the government.
No, Ayn Rand over and over again said that the legitimacy of the government is dependent on the consent of the governed. But I don't want to go beyond. I don't want to get.
I would agree with you. I would agree with her in the first instance and you in the second instance because I think it's an impossible metric.
So, Jane, I've been told to write an essay here. When people tell me to, no, I know she said it, Scott. I don't agree with it. Maybe I'm not even right. Christopher Smith says, you're stretching, Michael, when all the evidence points squarely in one direction. Okay, Christopher Smith, present the evidence.
Wait, what does it say?
I,
You're
I
stretching
want.
Michael.
He says I'm stretching it because all the evidence points in one direction. So present the
Certainly,
evidence.
man on the street interviews that I have seen go in the dirt, and also, believe it or not, prank videos where somebody goes up to a random Gazan, the camera's hidden, and says, as a prank, like they do here in the States, says, "Kiss the Israeli flag," and he gets his ass beat in the middle of the street by the guy he's saying that to. Now, clearly, Hamas agents are everywhere. You could say that it's a performative act on his part. You could.
I want to go with Manu. Manu said this perfectly, in my view. Manu said making a moral judgment about millions of people based on shifting poll data without acknowledging that data's limitations violates epistemological responsibility. No, and she says it's a question, and my answer to you, Manu, is yes.
And I would say
100%.
Irrelevant in war. I agree with Rand. Irrelevant in war.
But
yes,
that's different.
There are going to be people. A percentage, whatever the percentage is irrelevant. The fact is, Hamas did what it did. It represents the people of Palestine.
Yes.
The Palestinian people voted them in by a plurality. Whether or not it's authoritarian does not matter, because for those innocents in Gaza, they want Israel to dislodge Hamas as quickly as possible, even if it means the death of innocents, because they want that government gone. So I think the reason Rand said there are no innocents in the battlefield in war is because she understood that authoritarian regimes are populated by three different types of people: active and passive collaborators and rebels. And the rebels want you to invade. The active and passive collaborators, in some respect, are complicit in the crimes of the administration. I understand that it takes a huge person, a soul, a person with a gigantic soul, under those circumstances that authoritarians threaten, to rebel against them and to risk life and limb to rebel.
Mark, I have a question for you. Can you answer this question?
But the war is the consequence of their inaction.
If all of it was irrelevant about the amount of people that support Hamas, then why did you bring it up?
Irrelevant during war. No,
why bring it up?
I'm making the point. Well, because the article was with respect to.
So is it legitimate? Let me ask you this simple. Is it legitimate? And we don't even have to use this as a case scenario. Use any war that you want. Is it legitimate when you're at war to summarily go around executing civilians of the enemy country?
Executing? No.
Why not? I would support executing Hamas if they're all to be treated the same. Then why couldn't you?
Well, you're not. I'm talking about now we're talking about distinctions between individual actions and actions that states are doing as states.
Okay, where as a state,
populations moving against other populations.
Okay, is it legitimate? Would it be legitimate to drop a bomb that kills 50,000 civilians and it's only civilians in that area? Would that be legitimate to do?
Potentially.
Why? What's the difference?
If it undermines the morale of the enemy and makes them stop fighting the war, yes.
Okay, so then it's pragmatism, and the ends justifies the means.
No, the ends doesn't justify the means.
I think that's what that means. The ends justifies the means, literally.
No, the ends of the defender are to stop the war, right?
Yeah, and therefore, yes, and
therefore it is legitimate to take any means necessary to stop the war.
Right.
That's
so
not
the
pragmatism.
That's the ends justifies the means.
That's understanding that
does the ends justify the means, Mark?
The moral object.
You just said it did.
To end the emergency. I didn't. You did.
You said by any means necessary.
Right. Because
that means the ends justify the means.
Because
that means the ends justify the means.
The moral object of war is to stop the emergency situation.
I got to see something here.
In which no life is possible, in which morality is impossible. You cannot continue that state of being. You have to end it.
Okay.
Would you say emergency? And if you're an emergency, and you need to survive this emergency, you need to live. The object is to end the emergency as soon as possible. If you knew something would end the emergency, would you do it?
It would depend entirely what it was that you were asking me to do,
okay,
and it would depend on a abundance of particulars that I don't know about in this situation. What
Do you
all
think do you think dropping the bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was wrong?
all my life I've thought that it was correct. My I don't want to say instinct, but I would say it's correct. But I say that not knowing a whole lot of things about whether the war would have ended, how many people would have died had they not done it. You know what I mean?
It would have ended because the Japanese Navy was decimated.
No, I know, but you're
wanted
asking
to
me what
surrender.
I know, Mark. And what I'm telling you is that I'm very hesitant to judge people like Harry Truman, for instance, in that situation, given that he had far more information than what I know, right? And so I'm very hesitant. I by and large think that it was the correct action to take, but I could be swayed otherwise. And by the way, I'm not even saying that Israel is. You hear my dogs? They're howling because of
That's funny. That's cute. Then let me clarify this then, because I said, because there's a context that's implied to me and a context that's implied to you that's different, so we end up talking past each other. Because I would say that the Hiroshima and Nagasaki events were absolutely necessary. They did stop the war. Japan wanted to surrender conditionally before that. Their navy was decimated. They were done. But also the civilian population was preparing to do battle. So from island to island to island, the Americans understood that if they hopped all the way to Japan, they were going to lose millions upon millions of American troops. That was the option that Harry Truman was facing. Island hopping, millions of deaths, or taking a quick shot at these guys to end it. Now, I presume the same thing when you're talking about dropping a bomb on 50,000 people. I'm presuming the same thing, that the context that you're presenting this to me, I implied that the other alternatives.
But it doesn't. I'm introducing a hypothetical in order to identify a principle. I am not saying that in the current context, when you have Hamas embedded among civilians, that it's not okay to kill Hamas even if you have civilians. I'm trying to identify a moral principle. Is it okay if it would defeat the enemy, if it would help to defeat the enemy, to kill 50,000 innocent civilians without physically harming? You're just bombing a land of innocent civilians because you happen to know it's going to lead to the surrender of the overall enemy.
I mean, your hypothetical is tilted.
No, it's tilted for a reason, because I want to identify the principle under which we're operating.
The principle is ending the war.
But that's the point, Mark. Is it
just like
ending
the principle
the war?
Of ending an emergency is ending the emergency.
And I have read Magenta. Is it ending it by any means necessary? That's what I'm asking you.
I think any means necessary is a requirement for the defender. For the defender. It's a person who hasn't violated rights initially, but is now trying to reestablish a condition of civilization. Yes. And that's hard.
That's true.
And that's
Warren Fay. Yes. Magenta is written by Jim Valiant's buddy, Warren Fay. Okay. We got to get to the next articles. Go ahead.
Who knew that this was going to take up so much time, but I think it's fruitful. I think you demonstrated that there's a lot more diversity and of thought within the objectivist community about stuff like this than most people understand. I think that's great. Even though I'd love to see James Valiant's opinion about this, if it's close to mine or not. Okay, so you also sent me an article from Reason Magazine. We're lying to ourselves about taxes, spending, and the debt. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I thought that was a great article. Somehow Trump seems to think he's bridging paradoxes.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Akira Felix, you said, how do you know it's 50,000? Why don't you question the bogus numbers coming from Hamas? I did not get the 50,000 from Hamas, Akira. I got it from my imagination because it was a hypothetical.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything.
It had nothing to do with what Hamas says. I don't trust what Hamas says, ever. I also don't trust opinion polls that are done when Hamas is controlling the territory. All right, go ahead.
Yes, Greg Lewis, you mean objectivism isn't a solidly unified front? Who would have known? Right. No, so I'm looking to you, Michael. We seem to be fooling ourselves. We seem to be thinking that this debt isn't a real thing. I mean, if you polled Americans, they understand that the debt is something looming and something they have to take care of. But our politicians, seem to be very hesitant to actually give it up. I think they're reflecting other aspects of the American culture as well, which has become dependent upon a lot of this government largesse. But what do you think is going to happen? How are we lying to ourselves about taxes, spending, and the debt?
Okay. This this statement right here is what I absolutely hate. I hate when people communicate to me this way. Peter Rothline says, Michael doesn't understand the nature of war. Yes, Peter, I couldn't possibly disagree with you unless I just don't understand. That's not an effective argumentation technique. I disavow it 100%. You seem like a nice guy, Peter, but that's just not a good argumentation style. Okay. Now, what I think about the debt is I think that the author, Veronica D., I can't pronounce her name, but I've been reading her for over a decade, is absolutely correct that there needs to be sort of a reckoning, right, when it comes to the debt that people just don't seem to want to accept. Like you said, most people understand that the debt needs to come down. But then when you go and ask them particulars, well, we need to cut this, and this, they say, no, 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 no. But they don't understand that the problem is going to happen regardless of whether they want it or not. Right? You can't, it's not sustainable. The effects, what did Patrick Henry say? The effects are already upon us, right? We already suffer from the drag on the economy. We already suffer from having to pay interest on this debt, and it's just getting worse and worse. And people do not seem, or a lot of people anyway, don't want to recognize it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's scary that Trump can get away with this with his constituency, saying that we're cutting $4 trillion in taxes, spending $7 trillion, and somehow we're not going to have to pay the piper. By trying to stoke the economy through Powell, lowering interest rates. I mean, the guy is literally putting us on an a road to economic disaster, and nobody seems to be seeing it. The Republican pundits keep saying, look, everybody was saying we were going to see the effects of these tariffs. Where are they? How do you answer those, those guys that say, you know, you all predicted doom and gloom for us, and now the economy has surged by 2.4%. There's less unemployment than there was before. More jobs were created last quarter than they anticipated. What do you say to that?
I would say that we have taxation that's up around 37% for the top bracket, which is extremely high. I would say we've had inflation as they print money so that they can pay down the debt, and nobody liked that inflation. I would say that 2.4% economic growth isn't exactly stellar. Trump actually pronounced or predicted 4 to 7%, I think, in his first term. I don't think he had anything that was that, something like that. Yeah. He also predicted we would.
When was the last time a first world nation has seen 4 to 7% growth?
I don't know. A long time. I think America got upwards of 4% under Reagan. I'm not positive, but I think it was pretty good under Reagan. But so there's already drags on the economy. I think that when people predict societal collapse, that is it. You know, maybe it is a bit much, right? But if you understand that it's like the tariffs, right? People are saying, "Oh, look, the tariffs didn't cause any harm," but some products are more expensive. Companies are losing profit share. Those are real effects to real people's lives that are already happening, and it's, you know, it's been not that long. So yes, these things are already affecting us in a negative way. Do we just accept them? And plus, what about the massive rights violations that take place?
You know, Robert says something true. Did you know that if you wish to make a contribution to help reduce the national debt, you can do so through the U.S. Treasury's Gifts to Reduce Public Debt program? Wow. So I wonder if any people who vote Democrat or Republican who have deep pockets are going to go rushing to help eliminate that debt. Well, yeah, I think we've gotten ourselves in a pretty terrible situation where we are as a society. Many people within the society have become dependent on political largesse. They've become dependent on their political tribe and the programs that their political tribe endorses. And they understand that we're heading for the cliff, but don't have the willingness to do the things that we need to do to stop heading in that direction. And that's pretty scary, man, because there's no political will. There's no political will in the people on the part of.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry.
Time to put your money where your mouth is, Elon. Yeah. All right. So we just have a couple minutes. Whose turn is it to do capitalist?
It's your turn, but I have a question for Robert Nasser, actually. Robert, I want you to tell the group who said that, what you put in quotes. It's an interesting test. I know who originally said it, but I would like to know it. So real quickly, can we do the Psychology Today article at least? Did you read it?
I didn't get it. That was the last thing that was on my. I didn't.
You know what, Mark? I wanted to tell you too. Diana leveled quite the accusation at you, my lovely girlfriend. I hope she's watching because I'm going to put her out there. She said, "You know what? Mark's an actor. I think he just improvises sometimes when he doesn't read the articles." And I said, "No."
No. I don't improvise any articles.
I said, no, he doesn't. Mark always tells me when he doesn't read the articles. Robert Nasser, I want to give Robert Nasser a big round of applause. That is knowledge of fucking objectivism right there. He said it's Ayn Rand right here. I'll put it up.
Oh, quoting Barbara Brandon.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah, now it's coming back. So you want to talk about the Psychology Today article? Because the title...
Did you read it?
No. The title seemed great. It was the last one that you submitted to me. So, and was it after you gave me the? It was before.
No, it was about 6. It was about 6 o'clock this morning. 3 o'clock this morning your time. So there's really no excuse to this. For this.
There is. I wake up 2 hours before this and still can't finish the articles with all the stuff I do in the morning. So now I have to wake up at 6 and incur my wife's wrath because I already am waking up too early for her now. So look, raising leaders, not followers. I love that title. So tell me more about it.
The whole point of it is to teach kids that to be independent thinkers, that you don't do kids any service by just feeding them information, by substituting your judgment for their own, that people in general need to be able to think for themselves, to make decisions on their own without the fear of pressure or fear of what other people are going to think. That's probably not the best summation of the article, but I think it's good enough because we're just about out of time. But ultimately, it's about independence. We need people to be independent, not followers.
I think that's great. And I think we should make that a topic of our upcoming show, which will be...
We will.
Folks, we're going to be doing a show probably once a week or so. It depends. On the intersection of psychology and philosophy, and we'll be talking about how philosophy has helped us in our lives and could possibly help you as well. My capitalist thought for the day, I think, is going to revolve a little bit around morality, since we talked a great deal about that.
Can I tell you something first?
Yes, go ahead.
Great announcement. First of all, it's been a week now, and I'm just getting back to myself after this horrid wisdom tooth debacle. Not pain, just a lot of discomfort. But I've just booked tickets. I'm going back to San Diego in October, and I cannot freaking wait.
Oh, is this for the birthday bash?
I don't know if if I'm at liberty to say that, but yes.
Was I not at liberty to say something?
I have no idea, but yes, that's what it is.
Okay, good. I don't know if I will be here now because I got a job, so I might be out of town during that time. We will see. So James,
real quickly, I need to address something too. Oh, James says, say it. Okay, yes, it's for Leonard Peikoff's 92nd birthday. I am absolutely just ecstatic to be able to attend. I get to see my friend James Valiant once again out in San Diego. I hope that I'm not limited to just seeing him at the birthday party. I'm hoping we can hang out a little bit. That would be freaking great. But I just wanted to say for where is it? Megan Ribbons. Megan, yes, I know that Peter is a nice guy. I just very, very much disagreed with the way he made an argument. I can disagree with people and understand that they're still good people. I've interacted with him before. He's a great, watches the show. He gives good comments. I know he's a nice guy. Please, Peter, don't think that I meant that in any way beyond just addressing the argumentation style of the particular comment. So here's a great question. Wait, we're going sick now. Scott Schiff says, how do you hold a birthday party for someone who's isolated? Really, that's a really good question, Scott. How do you do that? I don't know.
Look
And
at
how
that.
do
All the objectivist drama comes to a head right here on the capitalist corner.
And Jim says Peter's a smart guy too. Yes, he's I believe an Aristotelian who's very familiar with objectivism, but I might be wrong about that. Yes, he's a smart guy. I just that's just a pet peeve of mine. That's all. Okay. She says
look, it's a decent pet peeve.
Megan says Peter's a cutie. Well, maybe that's something for Mark. I don't know, but she says he's taken. Okay, you can do the capitalist thought of the day.
You can't just give a shot over the bow like that and expect me to take it laying down, so to
speak. Not the best choice of words, Mark.
No, it was intended. It was intended. Look, so guys, we were talking about morality earlier. Michael and I were arguing about morality. Of course, we might not be on the page with respect to morality during war, or we might be. We just might be talking past each other, and I may not be qualifying my language in the way that I need to. But we know one thing for sure that we would both agree on. If we were to maintain a free republic, we have to be a moral people. People have to be independent-minded. They need to be free to be independent-minded and moral. And the capitalist world is one in which individuals are free to think for themselves, to reason for themselves, to pursue values without having obstructions thrown in their way. And that type of person is the most moral person in the world, because morality is a requirement for their lives. It's a requirement to judge the values that are coming into their lives. They need it. And that's why a capitalist society is a moral society, because their moral agency isn't sloughed off onto a group or into a bureaucracy. They hold it for themselves. The moral of the story is morals matter. Thank you, Robert. That's true. And on that note, folks, we're going to see you tomorrow. It's a Q&A day, so remember to bring your questions, and we'll try to bring the answers to you. We'll also have news updates as we go. If you don't have questions, if you're not stimulated, and I don't know how you couldn't be stimulated after a conversation like this, but if you're not, we'll come up with the news until you do get stimulated. Until then, guys, like and subscribe. Also, share this on YouTube and other platforms so that the algorithm likes us. I think we gained a few more subscribers today. We want to hit that 1,000 mark, folks, so we can start monetizing this and making it world renowned, so that Michael can do this for a living. Just doesn't have to do any other job. That would be fantastic.
That would be freaking fantastic.
I would like that too. So, folks, hit that like and subscribe button, and we will see you here tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat place, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. At some point, I'm going to be on your coast, but in a different country, and so we will be doing it.
No, you're going to be on my coast next week.
No, I'm talking about it. I'm talking about for my work, other work.
Yeah, but you're going to be on my coast next week.
Yes, that's true. But I'm talking about a longer term thing, my friend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, you'll see us here at the times that I just said, folks. Until that time, that gives you 23 hours, man, to check your premises and come back here with some stimulated questions. I'll see you later, folks. Peace.